Join me today to paint some beautiful loose poppies. Hi everybody, Kat here. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be painting a couple of loose poppies. I want to show you two different kind of meanings of loose. Loose just means that your strokes are loose, you're using water, you're letting watercolor do its thing, and less detail, of course. Although, even though you're doing a loose painting, you do still need to establish some lights and darks. So what I did with this one, this is just something I did before. This is based on the drawing of the last painting that we did, which looks like that. So that is the loose version of this. It's a little more abstract. You can also do something that's not quite so abstract, and it's still considered loose. So there's lots to cover, and let's get started. I'm going to use bigger brushes. That will help me to paint looser. If you would like to achieve something like this, I'm going to use our reference photo from yesterday, and I'm going to play. So I'm going to show you how to do this one first. So with very clean water and a very wet brush, I'm going to splatter some water here and there on my paper. I don't want to wet it uniformly. I just want the water, because when we paint over that, it will make the paint will go where the water is, so it'll disperse differently and it'll make magic. Okay, so we're going to get started. This is the painting that we did. So I'm going to just get this shape established here. So I'm going to go in with my nice warm reds. I hope you remember from the last video the nice warm reds. And I'm going to make a little very loose. Do you see how I'm holding my brush up here? I'm standing up. You don't have to stand, but I have to stand to do this. Now, do you see where it will go, where the water droplets are? And I'm not using a lot of paint right now because I just want to establish that first. That's the base of the leaf. Here I go again. That's the base of the petal. And on top of that, if you remember, we have a lot of light there. So I'm going to choose some orange, and I'm going to drop that in on the top. And my paint is watery. My brush is watery, and it's straight from the palette, this paint. And I'm using my Dollarama paper, folks. So I'm going to drop in some more red here, down at the bottom, and I'm going to let them bleed together. Okay, so now we have another petal right over here. And they're going to bleed into each other. Now, don't worry, if it goes somewhere you don't want it to go, we can fix that later. So I'm going to go in with some yellow and some orange just to make sure it's really light. And I'm just going to tickle that red. So this, we've lost the orange. Oh, yeah, you're getting a glare. Okay, I'm going to lift my, of course I put my tape away. I'm going to lift it so you don't get a glare. But what will happen is if you lift yours, your paint's going to travel downward. That's gravity. So I'm just going to pick this up because I don't want that there. What I want there is some of that yellowy orangey color. Okay, and this leaf turns out, so I'm going to just make it look like there's a little fold. It just flipped over. Okay. And now we have a very large leaf that goes around. So I'm going to paint that right now. I'm going to do it in the yellow and the orange. And I'm going to have a nice wet brush. Don't be afraid. And come around. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You will see what happens after. So, are we missing any leaf? Maybe something up here. I'm just going to clean this up. I don't mind having a sharp edge down here simply because this is where the poppy starts. So I don't mind that, but you decide. This is your artwork. I'm just going to take a towel and mop that up a little bit, and I'll work up here. So I'm going to take some red, and I'm going to drop it right in here because there's a leaf under there. A petal, not a leaf. Maybe I meant to paint some leaves. What do you think? Because I keep calling these petals leaves. Okay, so now here comes the fun part. You take your clean water and you're going to tickle the edge just like that. And you're going to go back up here and tickle this edge. Tickle it, tickle it. And that is what you're going to make your paint bleed. If you don't want to do it that way, see, this is dry already right here, so I'm going to go in. And don't worry, you don't have to worry about cauliflowers and stuff when you paint this way, because it's kind of what you're looking for. You're looking for the watercolor to do its thing. Also, what you can do is spray, and you can make it go in that direction. The only reason why I can't really do that right now is because I have my paper on an angle, so you don't get so much of a glare. You're still getting a glare though. Okay, if I dry this, maybe you won't get so much of a glare. I hope you can see, because it is just gorgeous what's happening. So while this is wet, this down here kind of got dry. So I just sprinkled a bit more water on it. Okay, and I'm going to go in with my pointier brush. It's still large and floppy and holds lots of water. And I'm going to get I'm going to take my sap green and some olive green and mix it, just so that it's not too dark. But they're both earthy, and I quite like it. So I'm going to come down just like that. Just like that. Now, it didn't seem to catch a droplet, so I'm going to spray that and see what happens there. And right there in the middle, that's drying already. Right there in the middle, you'll see that the stem will bleed into that poppy, which is kind of what we want. And I'm going to take my cut up Fabricville card, and I'm going to just make some fun leaf shapes or whatever. It's your work. You do what you want to do. Remember to keep a clean glass of water, because your water is going to get very, very grimy because you're working wet and you're working fast. So I'm taking a cooler red and I'm going to drop that in there. And it's good that it's not quite as wet as it was, because now we can add some shading to it. So we still have leaves that are recessed. If you remember our photo yesterday, you have shadows, right? So you still want to establish those shadows. Up here could be lighter. This is a great time to go in there. I'm going in with some yellow and some orange water. I'm going to just drop that in. And it's loosey-goosey. It's whatever you want to do. That's what you do. It's like intuitive painting. This is kind of like intuitive painting / abstract. So I'm just going to put a few of those needles. It has like a fuzzy stem, right? The poppy. So I'm just putting a few of those, and I'm going to go in once again with some darker cherry, or like it's more of a, I'm taking my warm red and my cool red, and cool colors make things go back. So we're going to add some in there. While this is still wet, we're going to do this. Okay. And I am going to take my spray bottle now. And on this one I had some glorious dripping. I love that. Whoopsie, I love when it does that. It drips. I'm going to add a drop of purple in there now. It's a good time for it. Tiny drop there, tiny drop there. This is a great way to really see what watercolor can do. Okay, so I'm splashing a bit more clear water because my droplets are drying. And I'm going to do some poppies that haven't opened yet. So the first thing I will do is take my well, let's say this is almost open. And I'm going to get some darker green. Put it at the bottom. Okay. And we're just going to have a little bit of red here. I'm mixing a warm and a cool red together just to get a really nice, authentic red. Sometimes that's very difficult to do I find in most sets it's hard to do. So I'm spraying that upward, and if I want it to go that way, then I would tilt my paper that way. I will not do that because of the tutorial, but it's still going. See, it's starting to get attracted to up there. And then I think I'm going to do another one down here, but this one's going to be tightly closed. Okay, so I'll get some of my green again. Make a little egg seed head. There. And I'm not really being very careful, if you can see. Okay. So while this is wet, clean your brush well. And I want to pick up some of that yellowy orange and drop it in on the flower that's just starting to open. And this one just right there. Just to give a hint of the tips of those flowers. And if you want to add, like, I'm not sure what a poppy leaf looks like. I've never really even noticed them. But you just put your brush on the side and do some zigzaggies like that. And then if you want it to look like there's more, you just add more stems and more seed pods. There's always seed pods around. I was reading a little bit about poppies the other day, and they're pretty resilient, these flowers, and they look quite delicate. Okay, so there's the seed pod there, or the unopened pod. It's not a seed pod anymore. And I'll just put a little bit of red right there. A little bit of dark green. Under that. Under there. And then you decide where you want your lights, darks, and stuff to be. It's not a huge deal right now. We're still at the beginning of the painting. And this is something, unfortunately, you are going to have to let dry by itself. Because if you use your hairdryer, I could probably get away with using it now. But if you do, the watercolor won't work its magic as well. I should take a smaller brush to do that. But I want to show you a different way to paint a loose poppy, and so I would like to get to that while this is drying. So I'm kind of rushing, you know. You know how it is. Oh, I took the wrong green. Oops. So in a loose painting, depending on how loose you want it to be, you don't want much detail. Or at least I don't. So I'm going to take this painting and I'm going to put it upside down and I'm going to let it dry. It looks quite nice upside down. So I'm going to let it dry on the angle I have it at. And for this painting, it's going to be loose, but I'm going to sit down. It's not going to be as abstract, just loose. So I'm going to take my nice loose brush now. And these ones I lightly drew with a pencil, but you really don't have to. So I'm going to wet one petal here. I'm going to take my nice warm red first. Or whatever color you want your poppies to be. And this paper, the other one was my Dollarama paper, and this paper is my bee paper. I'm going to take the top. Then I'm going to take, this is a mixture of my orange and my yellow. And the top of a poppy is kind of, it's just kind of rippled. It doesn't look perfectly straight like sunflowers can. Not sunflowers, some flowers. Okay, gonna let that dry, do its thing, and I'm gonna come and work on this one, but I need a brush with a better point. So this one I'm gonna go in with a nice layer of orange. So anything loose, if you want to paint loose, like people have asked, you know, how can I paint loose? The first thing I would do is get a bigger brush in your hand, so you're less likely, you're not able to control it the same way as a small brush. At least I'm not. And then what you can do is, see, since this is wet, I'm sorry to interrupt myself, but I want to put a stem in while that's wet. Not like the other painting I did, but still I want it to bleed in there a bit. So I'm going to come down like that. And hold your brush upright so that you can, there, we'll make that one a little thicker than it normally is. Who cares? Doesn't matter. And I wanted that to bleed down there. Okay. So since this is wet, I'm going to go in with my warm red, and I'm just going to put some paint where it's darker on the leaf. Rinsing, rinsing, and drying. Rinsing and drying. You could use 2 brushes for this if you like. And this is what I should have done. So if you lose some of your orange, you just gently put it back in. So it's pretty kind of dark down there. And it's dark over here. And we're going to rinse our brush and soften that. So as you can see, it's nowhere near as much detail as we did the other day. Just going to drop that in. I should wait. I'm going to wait. I always tell you to wait. I'm going to wait. But I'm so impatient. That's almost dry. I can go back to it in a minute. So down here by the black, I think it's a stamen, it's going to be darker down there too. So I'm going to go in with a deeper orange. And now that this is there, I'm going to go in with some red again, just at the very edge where we need a little bit of shadow. And so the reason why I would say that this is a loose painting, it's not nearly as abstract or free as the other one, but it is loose. You're not painting every detail. You're using the watercolor. You're letting it do what it does best. And you will never have two paintings the same. If you're painting loose, if you're painting, you'll have them close together, of course. They'll look similar, but not like you can't, because you won't know what this paint is going to do. Okay, so I'm going to come in on this side, and I should be waiting, but you know, as I said before, I'm not very patient. When you're painting wet on wet, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm going to discuss this with you. I'm going to make a video about this though for sure, because this is good stuff to know. Okay, I'm just going to take a scrap piece of paper. When you're painting wet on wet, let's say you want to do a stripe of some kind, or a tree, or if you normally would start at the bottom, because that'll be your thickest part, and then you let go at the top. But you see what happens when you're painting wet on wet? The last little bit of paint disperses. So what you would do is you'd start at the top and go down. So if you do get any release, it's there. So if you want a pointy tree, you wouldn't want that. You would, like a tree in the distance, you would do that. You wouldn't go up like that, because then you're going to end up with that. So that's a little trick for painting wet on wet. You'll always get that when you lift your brush up. But I would like, I'll possibly do a video about that stuff. It depends on what people want to know. Now over here, I think it's dry enough that I can come and do these two petals. So I'm going to go in with my bigger brush again with my warm red, and I'm going to overlap this petal, right, and this one. And it's okay if you leave some white space, that's all right. Okay. And you see how it's dried lighter, and that's what watercolor does. So I'm going to go in, and I'm going to get some of that yellow sort of orangey color that I put here, and I'm going to just tap it in there. There. Okay. Now we'll let those two dry, and we'll get back to this one as soon as this is dry. I think I'm going to use my hairdryer for this one. Actually, no, I'm going to do the stems. So we'll do the stems like we did on the other one, and we're just going to put some flicks. And of course, when you're doing a very tight painting, you would do these, you'd be slower, you do more precise paint strokes. I'm sorry about my hand, I'll try and put it back here. You hold your brush at a 90 degree to use the tip. So that's why sometimes I block the way, because I have to do it, or I won't be able to get the tip. And I don't want you to think my paintings are ugly. And the best time to do this is when your green is wet. So maybe I can go back over this, because it is kind of dry. And then what you do is you pull the paint out from there. So it's not really on your brush so much, it's more on your paper, and you're pulling it off. And so that makes these natural looking spikes. I think they're little soft hairs or something. I don't know what they're about, but there's also going to be a little blossom that hasn't quite opened yet. Okay. And I'll get more green. This paint set sure is getting its use. There we go. There, and I'm going to put some, while this is damp, I'm putting some darker up at the top and down here, because the light is shining on the rounded part of this seed pod, or whatever you call it. It's not a seed pod, it's a baby poppy. Sorry. It's kind of late, and I just wanted to make a video, and I'm silly. Sorry. Okay, so I can try and delete some of this out of the video, but sometimes I can't because I want you to see what I'm doing, so I'll be quiet. Pulling those spikes out. And all different directions, because your brain wants to make a pattern, and you don't want there to be a pattern because they're kind of not nice to look at. So, okay. And the stem is always dark up underneath the flower because the flower's shading it. So I'll wait for this one to dry a bit before I put a bit more shadowing in there. I'm just going to take up a tiny bit of this with my damp brush, dry it off. I'm just lifting that a bit. Okay. And I'm going to just let this tiny little bit of flower poke out. So you can see that there's one growing, just hasn't come out yet. There. Okay, perfect. Okay, now that this layer is all dry, now it's time to do a little bit. I just have to work on this petal. I couldn't touch it earlier because it was too damp next to the petal I need to work on. So I am just going to add a little bit more definition. Just going to erase this one a bit to this petal. And this is where the black is going to be. So I'm going to take a little bit of red and purple just to get a slightly cooler color. Like we discussed in the last video, the cooler colors are really important. And this one, we're going to go in with a bit more detail as well. So some cool red in with my warm red. And we're going to just you can re-wet this if you like or not. I want to get to my other painting to show you. So you just add a few striations if you want. You do not have to. And this one, it's kind of faded, the red. So I'm going to take a bit more of my warm red. I'm going to come up like this, rinse my brush, dab it, and then I'm going to just slide this like so, just so it's got a bit more color. Sorry, I'm trying to angle my arm. You could always wet the petal first. Sorry, you see what's happening? My water's dirty, so I'm getting red where I don't want it. So that's pretty wet right now. And I'm going to go in with my my towel. And I'm just going to dab this because I didn't want that much. So right where this petal overlaps, I'm going to make a bit of a shadow because there would be a shadow here because the two petals are overlapping the middle petal. And it's darker down here. So we're going to put some shadow down at the bottom. Okay. And here's where you can add some more color if you find it's faded. But loose painting is fun and it's expressive. It's less there's less rules to follow, if you know what I mean. You just have to try to practice getting to know where your lights and shadows are, because you still need to know where they are. And these are very hard lines, which I hate. So I'm just taking them out. I'm just going to go in with some cool red and drop that in for shadow. This one I'm not touching. I love how it turned out. I'm just going to add a bit more of the darker green to it. Oops, I'm sorry about your... Can you see okay? I've been really trying to watch that. So I'm going to add a bit there. And underneath the stem, because under the stem there it would be dark. This I'm just putting a little bit of purple in as the little the black part. So I'm going to put it in here. And then I'm going to add actual black. So I much prefer this one to this one because it's softer, it's looser. This one's a little bit less loose, but it's still loose. And then my absolute favorite, I like this little guy though. He is cutie. So I'm just trying to establish where the shadows are. I don't like that one at all, actually. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So then, of course, with a loose painting, what many people do, you could take a complementary color, or you could take colors that are already in your painting and have a splash party. And it just gives it a nice looseness. And it's for you. It's for you to look at and love. And I'm going to choose some purple because it is a nice complementary color to all those yellows and oranges that I see. And if I don't like them right here, I'm going to take that up. And there's that. That's one loose one. And we'll get back to this little guy. That was our project the other day. And I'm going to show you that even in a loose painting, you can go back and work on this. So you see in the picture above where each petal is. So we're going to establish these colors again. We're going to get them back, but very, very, very lightly. So we're going to go in. There's one there. Wet your brush. Soften that. And again, up here. Okay, and poke in with your point. Poke like that. See? So you don't lose the looseness. And you can go in with thick paint if you want, and then use a water bottle to squirt it out again, or you could just use a wet brush. It's really what you feel like doing. So I think I'm going to wet that with my spray bottle. And I'm going to come in down here. Can't even remember what red I was using. I think that's the wrong one. Yikes. I guess I'd do better to film in the morning, eh? Okay. So now here, there's a petal there that's quite in the shadow here. So I'm just going to drop some paint there. And down here for sure. I'm going to drop in some more paint. And you can make this as detailed or as loose as you want. It is your painting. You know, this is the important part. You need to do this and enjoy it. Really. Oh, it's so much fun. It's just so much fun. There we go. And there's only a handful of people that would actually say, that doesn't look anything like a flower. Most people really like this kind of stuff. So I'm just getting a bit more yellowy orangey. I'm making a mess of my palette, and I'm just going to touch that again because I want to make sure that there's a nice gradation, that there's a nice gradual mix of the paints. Now, of course, depending on the paper you're using, this is my Dollarama paper, so it's going to behave differently. It is. It's just the way it is. So I do want to pop in a teeny bit of purple. Like there's some right there. I want to pop in some right here. And down here. Down here. So you can actually start adding detail if you want to your loose painting. It's endless. You can do this. You could just go on and on and on. It's so much fun. So here I'm just adding a little bit of the color back. I don't want to lose what I've done, but just want to kiss it with the color just so that it comes back a little bit. And I am also on an angle. If you don't want your paint to go downward, then don't do this on an angle. You don't have to do it on an angle. I have to do it because of the camera. You know what? I'm going to use the credit card again. I'm going to come down. And I'm going to use my fabric fill card. Just going to scratch out what looks like some of those nice little hairs that are on the stem. Sometimes when you use splashes in your work, I don't want necessarily detail. I just want to get a tiny bit more color back. So I'm just going over some of those leaves again, just so we can get them back. And if you find that they're too harsh, the lines are too harsh, you just spray your paper. I'm standing to do this one. So I'm just putting a teeny bit of yellow here, just right there where they meet, just to add a little more brightness. And I think we can call this a nice loose poppy painting. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. There we go. That is it for our projects today. I really hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please consider giving me a like and subscribe to my channel. And thank you for all your wonderful comments. I mean, even if it's only one comment from someone, my heart is just full. I'm thrilled. I can't tell you how you make my day. So thank you again, and happy watercoloring. Bye bye.